Oh, yeah, DJ Nation fam, what is up? What is happening? It's the DJ Nation pod coming at you live once again for yet another week breakdown of DFS picks. I'm your host, Ryan Williams. You can find me on Twitter and X at Ryan Alexander _W. And I'm joined, as always, by the godfather himself of TFA, Mr. Kevin Steele at Fantasy Rat 13 is where you can find him on Twitter and X. Kev, we got week 4 to break down for the people on DraftKings DFS. How are you doing, man? How was your week 3? What's going on?
Week 3 would have been probably really good. Like I felt like I was on a lot of the plays. I was really heavy on AJ Brown but Dak Prescott had a lot of him, and that did not work out. And I don't even think it was. I don't even feel like it was all Dak Prescott's fault. Like he made some plays, and just like George Pickens dropping passes and stuff like that. But obviously losing CeeDee Lamb on the first drive of the game was a big problem with that. And so it wasn't to be. But I mean, I had, like I said, I mean, I had a lot of that. My best lineup was actually a Jalen Hurts stack I had with AJ Brown and then Puka running it back. But
Nice, nice. Yeah, we talked about that Eagles Ram spot on the pod last week and how it was jumping off of the page of a good leverage spot with all the studs being in that lineup. Yeah, week 3 was fun. I mean, a lot of people I know were a lot of people are dead with having CD Lamb leave that game with an injury, messed up Dak stacks, messed up Caleb stacks with the bring back necessarily. A lot of people had CD Lamb as a one-off, I know too. So yeah, week 3 was a fun one, and shaped out as such. I mean, Vikings D putting up 30 and change or whatever is always going to be something that you need to have in those large field tournaments. But even then, I saw a lot of people talking about the Vikings D and just what it was like not having them. But like Colts D was good. Like there were so many defensive touchdowns on that early slate. Like even though the Vikings got 30, you could have been okay if you took some of the other chances, even paying down for the Browns defense, at 2,200, getting 13 or 14 points, whatever it was decent. But yeah, week 3 in the books. We're talking week 4 on the DraftKings slate here. We got 11 games to break down for the people. And again, shapes up to be an enticing one. We got a lot of stud quarterbacks on the slate. We got some value already as we do an early breakdown here on the DJ Nation podcast powered by the Fantasy Authority. Early week look pretty much, or midweek look, I should say. But, Thursday, a lot of things can still break. A lot of things can still happen, but things are shaping up appropriately to be able to build some of these lineups. Kev, we got 4 games in that 3:00 window, 7 games in the early slate. And the DJ Nation knows what we do by now. I mean, we break it down for starting off at the quarterback position and diving into that. As I said, it's been a while, a couple slates. Obviously, this is only the 4th week of the season, but if you go back to last season, it's hard to find slates when you have the likes of Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, and Jaden Daniels on the same slate. And that's what we have here. We have 2 of the quarterbacks that I just mentioned going head to head against each other in Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson in that late window. So a lot of banana spots that I think are popping up. But of course, as always, we're going to see, very popular spots. When we talk about, guys who are going to be projecting high, I think it'll definitely start at the top with Josh Allen, at 7,700. People will try and get those points there. I mean, they're a huge heavy point favorite at home against the New Orleans Saints there with around a 31.5 implied team total. And, people just see Bill smash spot and it's like, how can you not play Josh Allen? We'll talk about another popular play for the Buffalo Bills there, but I expect him to garner some decent ownership. We had an interesting thing that broke last week at the quarterback position with 2 value spots opening up late, and Carson Wentz and Marcus Mariota. We're still waiting to see what Jaden Daniels' status is going to be from a Mariota perspective, but looks like he will be, at this point point in time be gearing to play and suiting up despite that knee injury. So he's in a really good spot there going against Atlanta. If he suits up, I expect Justin Herbert to be popular. He's 6,300 going against the Giants. This Giants team that has been allowing a lot of points in bunches, and it's always weird when you see a West Coast team traveling to the East Coast. Much hasn't been made of that over recent years, but that used to be a thing always, Kev. It's like these West Coast teams traveling to East Coast in kind of like a flop leg spot that you could project, but still coming in with some decent ownership on them. Where I want to pick your brain at, Kev, is kind of in this late window here. And maybe even the Detroit Lions spot, as it's been so hard to run against this team. I think I think Jared Goff could be getting overlooked at 6,400. We know what they can do. We've seen it time and time again at Ford Field. They're just such an explosive offense, and he could be overlooked. But in this late window, we got the Rams and Colts game that I expect to garner a ton of ownership. The Bears Raiders game gonna garner a ton of ownership again, and then like I said, you got Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson going against each other, and that game is sure to drive some ownership as well too. So when we're looking at quarterback, Kev, what stands out to you? Where are you looking to start your team builds as you dive into Week 4?
Yeah, I think for me right now, I think there's 4 quarterbacks that really stand out the most. And of course, Lamar Mercado scores. I think for me, it starts with Justin Herbert. I know he's going to be popular, but he's only 6,300. It's incredibly too cheap. He is one of, he's in this spot here. And, if you look, heading into this year, there was a lot of conversation about, thinking that this team was going to be very run heavy and that this team was going to throw the ball. That just hasn't been the case. They're actually first in passer rate over expectation. They are sixth in, they have the 6th most pass attempts per game. He has been phenomenal. He has 8.0 yards per attempt, his top 6. And then he has the 2nd most air yards. He's 2nd in deep ball attempts, 9th in red zone attempts. He's averaging 286.7 yards per game and over 2 passing touchdowns per game right now. And then you got this incredible matchup against the Giants, who right now, I mean, they have allowed, they're allowing 272 passing yards per game, almost a touchdown and a half, and the 6th most DK points to quarterbacks right now. And so it's really hard to get away from this. I do think the Jackson Dart thing is interesting too, because I think this offense could be a little bit more explosive for the Giants. I actually have some interest in Jackson Dart as well on the other side. It is a little bit scary because the Chargers defense has been so good this year for the most part, but I think Jackson Dart provides something on the ground. He could, and so I think you're going to have some design runs for him. But I think it starts for me, though, on this Chargers side. And I actually really like Ladd McConkey in a bounce back spot here. He's been running like 57% of his routes for the slot. And this is a very good matchup here. And so I think Ladd McConkey could actually bounce back on this one. But the other quarterbacks I like, Caleb Williams. Now, this is an offense that's been a little bit more balanced. They're 18th in pass plays per game. But he's been really good. 7.7 yards per attempt, 10th in air yards. He's 3rd in deep ball attempts. And right now, he's averaging over 2 passing touchdowns per game. But he is 5th in fantasy points per dropback. He has the 3rd most DK points on this slate. He's also the one thing that's helped him is his 5.3 carries per game. He has the 6th most rushing yards, and he also has a rushing touchdown. But Caleb, he's $5,800. You get this incredible matchup against the Raiders, who've allowed the 10th most passing yards and the 10th most DK points to quarterbacks. They've also allowed the 9th most rushing yards to quarterbacks as well. And so it's going to be really hard to get away from Caleb Williams in this spot here. You could talk me into going with Geno Smith on the other side of that game as well, but I like the Caleb Williams side a little bit more. And then the last two for me is Daniel Jones, who's only $5,600. It's wild that we're talking about Daniel Jones in 2024, or 2025, as this quarterback that it looks like a top 10 quarterback rest of the season. And this is an offense that's super explosive because they're actually only 26th in pass attempts per game, but they have been utilizing the deep ball a lot here, 9.3 yards per attempt, which is 2nd most. He's also, once they get inside the red zone, they do look to throw. They're 11th in red zone attempts, but he's averaging 272 passing yards and a passing touchdown per game. He also has the 4th most fantasy points per dropback, and he's averaging the 4th most DK points to the position. Now, when it comes to this Rams defense that they're going to be seeing here, the Rams are very good up front, but their secondary is not very good. And if this Colts offensive line can hold up here, I think we could see Daniel Jones shred this defense here. We kind of
Mhm.
saw it last week with the Eagles where they struggled in the first half, and then they really started to want to throw the ball, and they really had their way with that defense. And honestly, I will say this: as much as I like the Rams defense, they have had a very easy opening schedule against the teams like the Texans and the Titans, and so I wouldn't say they've really faced too many great offenses to this point. And the only one that we have seen, went out in the second half of that game and put up over it was almost 200 passing yards, a couple touchdowns in that second half of that game. So Daniel Jones, and also is somebody that he's going to give you rushing attempts. He has 3 rushing touchdowns already this season, 3 red zone carries per game right now for him. And so Daniel Jones is hard to get away from at 5,600. Very easy to stack him up with somebody. Stack him up with Michael Pittman if you want to, Tyler Warren, and then run it back with Puka Nacua or Javante Adams, for that matter, because their target shares are so consolidated. And then after that, I have some interest in Patrick Mahomes, but at first, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to play. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to play the Chiefs. I'm not going to talk myself into it. But it's hard to, and how bad this Ravens defense has been. This Ravens defense has been fucking dreadful, allowing 271 passing yards per game, almost 2 passing touchdowns per game, and the third most DK points to quarterbacks. I get it. Patrick Mahomes hasn't been great, but he hasn't been as bad as I think. At least he personally has not been as bad as I think what other people think that he has. He has 223 passing yards per game, 2 touchdowns per game, but he's still averaging the 8th most DK points and he's 10th in fantasy points per dropback. And a lot of that is because he is the leading rusher for the Kansas City Chiefs because he has the 8th most carries and 2 rushing touchdowns. They're utilizing him a lot on the ground. And another positive here is Xavier Worthy is expected to be back for this game. And so I think that is a boost to this offense. I don't think I would go crazy in terms of how I stack him with Patrick Mahomes, but I think at the very least, like a Mahomes, Worthy or Mahomes, Kelsey, something like that, I think you could do, or Mahomes, Tyquan Thornton. I wouldn't want to go crazy in this, but honestly, a lot of times these games with the Chiefs, they tend to be bet down, but we're not seeing that with this game. The total is holding right now, and it's one of the highest totals on the slate. I think it's 48 points here for this game. I was expecting this total to drop, but it hasn't at all, and it's held strong here where it's at. And so, with that being said, I think you have to have some interest in this game.
Yeah, that's one that I haven't. It's Thursday right now, and I haven't just had a chance to dive into enough. But I do like where your head's at, Kev, because this Baltimore team, they have to get going. They have to get going on offense. This is a slow start for them. We know what their aspirations are, and they just haven't been able to put it together. Derrick Henry seems like a broken man with 3 fumbles in 3 games, just very uncharacteristic of him. And the Chiefs need to get going as well too. Have that strong win against the Giants, on the road and back at this home crowd, and they've opened up the year very differently than they're used to as well. So I feel like both of these offenses could be in a spot to be aggressive. It's a very, very good matchup. I wish it would be fun if Kansas City had a running back that we could trust, because it's a very good matchup on the ground for anybody that's going against this defense, but really good matchup for the tight end. So I'm excited to talk about that when we get to that point. But yeah, Patrick Mahomes being at 6K in a home matchup where points are expected to be scored at low ownership, possibly, and we'll see what that kind of shakes out with towards the end of the week. But yeah, if he's going to be low owned, I'll have some interest there. Absolutely love the Danny Dimes call. I think that, he's going to be one of my favorite quarterbacks yet again. I talked about that Tennessee and Indy game last week and had a lot of interest in that. And Jonathan Taylor ended up doing up most of the heavy lifting. This will be a tough matchup for Jonathan Taylor going against this Rams. You mentioned their front 7, and they've been, limiting backs, just limited Saquon Barkley as well. And so if Danny Dimes is able to, get some time to carve him up, I like it. It's also, possibly going to be a concentrated offense that we're looking at, Kev. Alec Pierce, I think, is expected to miss, if I'm not mistaken. And, he he's been getting some work, and that could free up, a guy like possibly AD Mitchell, who's only 3,100 this week, and you got Tyler Warren there, who you could check off the tight end box, and Michael Pittman's been, kind of secretly a stud all season long to start. It's nice to see him have a bounce back year. So yeah, interested in those spots. I think for me, Jared Goff, I do think offers insane leverage on the field at 6,400. I just feel like not a lot of people will go there, and he does have great weapons to be able to pair with him that do stand out to me. And we'll talk about that.
Are you not worried though about the Browns defense there? I mean, how good the Browns
Well,
defense has been.
they are, but if they're not able to run, I think that the Lions, it's just these games at Ford Field, they just get weird. And the Lions are just so uber aggressive. Like, yeah, if we can't run the ball, we're gonna find ways to get the ball in our playmaker hands in space. You can't stop. You're going to stop maybe Gibbs and Montgomery from running, but can you stop Amon-Ra? Can you stop Jameson? Sam Laporta could get going? Like, there's just so many ways for them to beat them. The thing about the Packers game, the Packers are just like, they're so predictable when it comes to offense if they're not able to run the ball. They just don't have the wide receiver acumen, I guess, for lack of a better word, to be able to get things going when they're getting pressure. I think they'll be able to get the ball out of Jared Goff's hands and make it enticing if they're not able to run. So could be long day for this Browns D on the road with long drives being established. So we'll see. I mean, they're implied for almost 28 points. So I'm interested there in some leverage. The other spot too, Kev, it's the Chicago and Raiders game. We just saw Geno Smith doubles win Millies. And this Bears defense, let's not forget. I mean, this is a Bears defense that had been getting beat. In 2 weeks prior, Dak Prescott loses his number one receiver. They're on the road, just doesn't look the same. And I was already worried about that game, being in Chicago with the Dallas traveling in. It's just, I always like playing Dallas when they're at home. It seems like the games tend to go more over the total for them, or at least their team total when they're at home. This Bears spot here going to the Raiders, I do think that Geno sets up pretty nicely. He's got some really fun pieces to be able to pair him with, and Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker, if you want to go back to that. Well, but Brock Bowers at tight end, has a chance to really separate himself at the tight end position. And so many people will be going, I feel like, to the running back position here to finally get on, the rookie kid, to see that the points are going there. And I could just see Geno carving up this defense that's still depleted in the secondary. So I'm interested in Geno Smith again at 5,400. Going to be going back to that well. Before we move on, Kev, we talked about some of these cheap quarterbacks opening up, and we do have one in Jackson Dart. He's 4,500. He's on the other side of this Chargers game. It's always weird. You don't know, what to expect. This Chargers defense is really good, but he's only 4,500. Cheap. He's going to have a rookie running back who's starting alongside him. It's really one guy in the passing game who can make something happen, but 4,500 there against the team, he might be passing a lot. Got to bring him up because I think he'll make it into people's lineups.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I don't necessarily love the matchup, but I think that he provides a lot. Like I've said, this ability to run the ball, I think brings up. And like I know it's just preseason, but man, this kid absolutely balled in the preseason. He was like 37 for 45, 372 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also ran 6 times for like 60 yards and another score during the preseason. So like, I think there's a lot to be excited about with him. I just don't know if this is necessarily the best spot to be playing, but I will say, weird things happen. This is the Chargers traveling across the country for a noon game here, or for an early for this game. So crazier things have happened, and so he's $4,500. So like, I don't hate it. I think if there's any other like cheap quarterbacks, I think you might be able to talk me into, like Bryce Young. I think there's some intrigue here against the Patriots. The Patriots' pass defense hasn't been incredible so far. And so, like, Bryce Young could be an option here. I would love to talk about Michael Penix, but Michael Penix has been fucking terrible. so far this year. Like he just has not been very good at all. But he's cheap at 5,100. Maybe he bounces back in this game, especially if Jaden Daniels plays in this spot. We'll have to see, if he's able to play. But and also Drake May on the other side of that, like $5,500 Drake May. But he's so hard to stack too. I guess unless you're going to play with like Hunter Henry, who had a big game last week, but like they just spread the ball around so much, it makes it tougher to trust. I just think there's better options there in terms of like the cheap quarterback plays.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, Penix is he's got to he's got to show it to me on some film before I can go back to that well again. I do think it's interesting though, Kev. Before we move on to running back real quickly, Brock Purdy is expected back. And this 49ers team is, we know that they're dealing with injuries across the front, but Juwan Jennings could be expected to miss again. And, last week I kind of got on late with the Sunday report of just trying to jam in CMC and Ricky Pearsall where I could because of the nature of Juwan Jennings being out. And it's just such a concentrated offense there that, if we start to get into Saturday night and Sunday, and everybody's been take locked on all these other games, and we have the San Francisco and Jacksonville game in San Fran where nobody's thinking about Brock Purdy. I'm definitely going to have some exposure to him with the way that this offense is currently set up right now. What's your thought on that?
I don't hate it. Just see 6,100. I just think maybe there might be a little bit better options. Jacksonville's defense has sneakily been pretty solid so far this year. But I don't hate it. It's just you don't have Juwan Jennings, I mean, your weapons become pretty limited no matter what. And so I wouldn't have as much interest unless Juwan Jennings played. But especially whenever you have like Mahomes and Herbert that are stacked right around them, I don't hate it. I actually think if I was going to pay up for quarterback this week, I actually think if he plays, I think it probably would be Jaden Daniels that I would look to play at 7K because. Obviously I have no problem with Lamar Jackson at $7,500 whatsoever. But the Chiefs defense typically does a pretty good job against Lamar and typically containing him. The Chiefs defense has actually been the only reason they're even in most of these games because how bad their offense has been. But I don't really have any interest in Josh Allen this week, which seems crazy. But I would much rather play. There is somebody in this game that I definitely want to play, but it's just not necessarily Josh Allen here. I just don't think New Orleans is really going to push them at all to force them to really open up the offense. And paying $7,700 for Josh Allen just doesn't sound like something I really want to do.
Yeah. So, well, let's go to running back and talk about the running back slate, because as much as we talked about how the stud quarterbacks are all on this slate, I mean, look at the running backs that are offered to us that, this slate, and, Christian McCaffrey being priced up at 8,500 now, going against this Jacksonville team, Bijan Robinson at 8,200, while Penix is, struggling. He's just going to have to carry the workload for this Atlanta team. Jonathan Taylor, 7,500. Saquon Barkley's on the slate. You got Jahmyr Gibbs as well. Derrick Henry as well. So a lot of stud running backs on the slate. And then there's going to be some value guys. But in this mid-range, I expect James Cook at 7,100 to be extremely popular, in this matchup. It checks all the boxes from a DFS, perspective of, home favorite, heavy favorite that is, in a good spot situation. I expect a lot of people try and get their exposure through them. What worries me about James Cook, and he's been really good in these spots traditionally, and Josh Allen ironically has not been as great when the Bills are heavy favorites. He kind of disappoints, but I think it's an interesting scenario where if you're saying, all right, do I want to guess, is it Josh Allen or is it James Cook? Like if I'm playing the Bills side, I might just play both of these dudes together, even though they're both expensive, because they take up like $15K in salary, I think, on your roster. But just saying that, like, let's hope that all the touchdowns go there. We know that Josh Allen has the propensity to run in the red zone, get vulture from James Cook, but James Cook has the ability to rip one off from anywhere. So, it's so hard to guess these pass catchers for the Bills that I would just try and just pair the two of them, maybe with a Dalton Kincaid because the tight end spot's so gross, and get leverage there. Like I just can't see myself playing either one of those guys as one-offs, but James Cook is definitely in a good spot. He's going to be popular popular. Definitely want to get your take on him, Kev. And then at the cheap side, we're going to have exposure to Amari and Hampton at 5,900 against the Giants. On the other side of that game, Cam Scattaboo, both of those backfields are dealing with injuries that are setting up these rookies to definitely pop on paper. I think when you scroll down, it gets a little bit dicey. Maybe, Tony Pollard just hasn't been able to find it as of yet, but he's going against the Houston team that is struggling. Maybe he finally gets going. Alvin Kamara is interesting. The Saints offense is so concentrated around four guys that I think there's going to be a game that Alvin Kamara puts up, 30 points because of his propensity to catch passes out of the backfield. So he's always interesting to me. And then when we talk about paying down, before I pass it to you, Kev, I do got to mention Travion Henderson. Like, I'm going to get this guy right before he gets priced up. And we saw that, Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson last week combined for 3 fumbles in the game, which led to Travion Henderson seeing pretty much a majority of the work, if not all the work, in the second half of the game last week. And he gets to go against this Carolina team that has definitely, been one that we've been targeting all across the field at any position. So he's only 5,200 this week. Not sure what his ownership is going to shake out to be. I could see a lot of sharps getting on him later on in the week. But I mean, as of right now, I think that I'm definitely going to have some lineups that have him. I think he's somewhat of a better play than Cam Scattaboo, just because of the matchups that each one of them are going to be seeing, and this the leverage you can get on what the ownership is going to be. But yeah, let's talk running backs, Kevin, and how are you seeing the slate this week?
Yeah, I think you start with James Cook. I think he's going to be popular, but I think this is good chalk because you kind of mentioned it that in games that they're heavy favorites, James Cook is actually the guy who benefits the most. He averages it's like 18 or 19 DraftKings points per game in games that they're heavy favorites, and so I mean, 7,100, I think, for what he's been able to do so far this year. And he's done it on, somewhat limited touches. He's still only playing like 60% of the snaps, but he's getting most of the running back work out of the backfield. And he's just been phenomenal so far to start the year. And anytime you're in a, Josh Allen offense, you're going to be able to score a lot of touchdowns. And just $7,100, I feel like he should be up there in the upper 7K range for how well he's played so far. I mean, he's averaging 24 DK points. He's
Right.
right now, just behind Jonathan Taylor, and so $7,100, incredible matchup. So I'm going to play James Cook, and I think past that, I think there's some other ones. Amari and Hampton at $5,900, coming off his best game of the year, and obviously, it wasn't looking like that last week. It was actually looking like it was going to be a Najee Harris game, because Najee Harris actually came out and I think handled like 6 of the first 7 running back touches in that backfield, and then until he tore his Achilles. But after that, he played 79% of the 79% of the snaps, ran 31 routes, was targeted 7 times. And for this offense, it's going to throw the ball. I think that's where Amari and Hampton becomes super interesting. And the Giants have been terrible against the run. 5th most rushing yards, 3rd most rushing touchdowns, and the 3rd most DK points so far this year. And so Hampton at just $5,900, I would imagine he's going to be popular, but it is an incredible matchup here. I think it's another game where I would consider it good chalk because he's going to be the only guy here. They have Kamani Vidal as the other running back in this backfield right now. And so there's just nobody that's going to take any away touches from him. So he's going to receive an absolute true workhorse role. And you're generally going to find those type of guys at $5,900. And so Hampton, I'm somebody I'm super interested in. I was actually interested in Chuba Hubbard here, but we might actually get a little bit of free square action this week because he picked up a calf injury at practice today, and so that's something we're gonna have to monitor because we have to remember he was placed on IR at the end of last year because of a calf injury. So we'll see on that. If he's unable to go, you have $4,500 Rico Dowdle, who Dowdle's
Yeah.
not phenomenal by any means. He is a useful backup running back. We kind of saw him last year with Dallas. He's able to catch passes out of the backfield. But either way, this is a team that struggled against pass catching running backs, 5th most receptions, 4th most receiving yards to running backs of the New England Patriots. And if Chuba is able to play, I like that because he's averaging almost 5 targets per game. He's seeing a 13% target share. He's also 8th in route participation. So there's lots to like here with Chuba Hubbard if he plays. If it's not, then I think you just pivot over to Rico Dotto, who's $4,500, in a cheap play. But either way, I think it's a good matchup for either one of them. I don't mind the call of Travion Henderson because, like, at some point, when the fuck are we just going to give the ball to Travion Henderson? Like, I have no idea what this man has to do because, like, it was shocking to me because, like, after the first fumble, I was like, okay, they're going to give Travion Henderson some touches. They didn't, and they kept with Ramondre. He fumbled again. All right, now you got to go to him, right? No, they put Antonio Gibson in the backfield. I'm like, what has this man done to not be able to earn touches and for them to? And they finally, once Antonio Gibson fumbled, then they finally made him a workhorse and finally went with him in the second half. Like, it's shocking to me that
Yeah, it's like, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah, like their most explosive player they have on their offense, they're just not incorporating. But I don't mind taking some shots because he's $5,200. Good matchup against Carolina. And so, like, if they do turn to him and make him a little bit more of a featured role, then I mean, this could be a home run and it could be a big time play at $5,200 because I mean that's incredibly too cheap for what his upside actually is if they actually feature him within this offense. So I do like that call with Travion Henderson. I completely agree with you on that one as well. But other than that, like I think I'm gonna be pretty condensed with running backs this week because like the upper guys, like I don't mind. Obviously, I have no problem playing Christian McCaffrey, but now he's way more expensive. Before, when he was in the 7K range, it was obviously his value met that. But now you're $8,500. You really have to have a big time week, a big spike week for him to pay off at that price. And so I think it's a little bit less of a conversation when it comes to Christian McCaffrey because of the fact that he's $8,500. I think Bijan Robinson is in the same boat now that they priced him up. He's $8,200. I like both of them. The running backs that I'm afraid that I really don't think I'm going to have much of is probably the Lions running backs because right now the Cleveland Browns run defense has been absolutely elite. Like you just cannot run the ball on them. They have shut down every running back that they have faced, whether it's Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, or Chase Brown. They have shut down every one of those dudes. None of them have done absolutely anything against them. And so, like, for me, I think that I'm not as excited. Like, you could probably tell me a story about Jahmyr Gibbs because of how involved he is in the passing game, but I have zero interest in chasing what David Montgomery did last week against the Ravens, the 2-touchdown game that he had. I won't have any of that. I have a respect for this Cleveland Browns defense. I think they are legit, and they are a defense that I don't really want to go up against.
Yeah, I don't blame you, guy. I would not play either one of those guys as a one-off and any one-off. It would have to be built around a game stack or team stack for me to get there. Yeah, I think I think it's going to be a concentrated pool for me. I like a lot of the rookie running backs this week. They're all cheap. Hampton, Genty, Scattaboo, Travion, and then at the top, I mean, I'm gonna be playing Christian McCaffrey, especially if they have some wide receivers out, and then James Cook, where I get my exposure to Josh Allen. And I think I could maybe be talked into some Kyron Williams and Alvin Kamara, in the 6K range, just because Kyron is just. And we'll talk about it at wide receiver, which Puka's still not priced where he needs to be. But Kyron just has such a propensity to, make stuff happen in the red zone. Like they're just so enamored with being able to give him the ball when they get inside the 20. And he's just a good back. And in a game that I expect points to be scored on the other side too, I think that he makes for a great play with Puka or even as leverage on Puka. So I'll get there. And then Alvin Kamara, kind of the same type of thing. Like if I expect the Saints to be trailing, I'm going to have some exposure to Alvin Kamara here in the spot because, like I said, I think he still has the pass catching chops and still has the ability to be able to put up 30 points on DK on a PPR site. So, but yeah, outside of that, like I don't really see myself at this point getting to much of anything else at the running back position. So we'll be playing it from that standpoint. Let's talk about wide receiver, Kev. Wide receiver becomes interesting as well too. You know, when we're talking about, I mean, Pua Nakua, Puka Nakua, you have him priced at 7,900 this week, and it still feels like he's not priced high enough. With the usage this guy is seeing, it's pretty insane to think about. Now that he's getting, you know, I guess running back work. You know, they're trying to scheme him runs every game. Just get the ball in this guy's hands, and that's what he does. I mean, Sean McVay is just so great at being able to get the ball into those playmakers. We love that from a fantasy standpoint. You know, he's 7,900, Devontae's 6,200. Like I just see myself building around this Indy and Rams game so much. Like even if you're playing Danny Dimes with two pass catchers, you could still feel good about taking, you know, two pass catchers from the Rams or a pass catcher and Kyron from the Rams, and just really make a really good, you know, a really sharp team. I feel like from just stacking that game environment. At some point, I feel like Nico is gonna hit home. I mean, you know, this is a divisional matchup with Houston and Tennessee, 7,400. Like, I mean, people were playing CD Lamb, you know, one off at 8K last week, and Nico's just so involved in the offense that, you know, I could see myself playing him as a one off there at 7,400. Emeka Ibuka, 6,800. You know, we're possibly going to be without Mike Evans, tail as old as time. I mean, this clock is never late. Like Mike Evans dealing with the soft tissue injury, you know, 4 weeks into the season, 3 weeks into the season, just hilarious. So the rookie kid is definitely going to shape up to be in a good spot. I know you mentioned Lad McConkey and the Chargers there. I think Lad, you know, is definitely going to get going at some point, but you know, Quentin Johnson, he's 5,500 and he's been electric, you know, in his third year. I know he's had a case of the dropsies. You know, last time me and you got into it over a guy who dropped passes a lot was Devontae Adams, you know, when he was coming out, and look what happened. I'm not saying he's on that trajectory, but you know, I think the drops kind of get overblown sometimes with some of these players, and he has the trust of Harbaugh in the offense, it sounds like. So, you know, there's fun stacks that you could do with Herbert there, outside of just playing McConkey, and they really don't have, you know, a tight end equity to speak of right now. So that's interesting. Rome, finally, you know, he's getting priced up to where he should be. Crazy increase in price tag from, you know, whatever he was, 52 or 5,300 last week to 6,300 this week, and still feels like, you know, that's fair. It doesn't feel like he's, you know, at the price tag where he needs to be, and that where he's been involved. So, you know, definitely going to be on my Caleb teams, definitely going to be on my Geno teams as a bring back, like getting to him. Got to monitor what's going on in the Washington game, because without Terry McLaurin, I could definitely see more scheme passes for Deebo Samuel, scheme more work, actually. And he's only 6K. He makes for an interesting one-off to me. Ricky Pearsall mentioned going to be having a ton of him, whether it's on Brock Purdy teams or not, especially if Jawan Jennings is going to miss. You know, Colts receivers, I'm going to be stacking up. There's a lot of fun things to do at the wide receiver position this week, Kev. Where are you at, and you know, kind of where your stacks at, where your one-off's going to be? How are you seeing the slate from a wide receiver position?
Yeah, I think there's one. I mean, I completely agree with you about Puka Nakua. I don't understand why he's only $7,900. Like, the usage is absolutely incredible. 44% target per out run rate, 45% market share of the air yards, fourth and first read target share. The dude has a ridiculous 4.27 yards per route run, second yards team pass hit, but he's averaging what, 27, I think, DK, or 26 DK points, and he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. Like, that's the crazy part. Like, the dude hasn't even scored a touchdown, and he's averaging, you know, 26 DK points per game. And, you know,
Yeah,
that's going to come. And it's just
that's incredible.
ridiculous. Like,
That's
it's like,
incredible.
just shove him into your lineups. And honestly, on the other side, like Devontae Adams at 6,200, like, and he's seeing incredible usage, 31% target per out run rate, sixth in market share of air yards. And so, like, both of these guys, it's so consolidated. And so, you know what you're going to get every single time you play these two. And like, I just think they're too cheap. And that's why, like, I played a lot of Devontae Adams last week, because he was still $6,200 last week. And, you know, he scored the touchdown, didn't do as much after that because they were doing a Quinion Mitchell shadow on Devontae Adams with him, and so you didn't see as much usage after that. But both of these guys are just seeing way too much volume to be priced where they are. And so both of these guys can absolutely go off. And so I like both of those dudes this week for sure. I think Nico Collins, I think, is a good play against the Titans this week. The Titans have allowed the fourth most receptions or the fourth most receiving yards and the 12th most touchdowns to wide receivers and the fifth most DK points so far this year. Now, don't get me wrong, the Texans offense has not been very good this year at all. I think Nick Caley is a terrible offensive coordinator. I mean, 0 for 2 so far with DeMeco Ryans bringing in offensive coordinators here. But either way, Nico Collins is still the focal point of this offense. 27% target per route run rate. He's ninth in red zone targets as well. He's top 7 in first read target share. So Nico Collins is easily in play at $7,400. And honestly, I actually think that on the other side, or in the same game, I also think Christian Kirk, I think, is a really interesting play at 4,400. First game back last week, saw 8 targets, looked kind of rusty, but I do think that Christian Kirk is going to have better days here, and so $4,400 Christian Kirk, a player that's probably going to see 7 to 8 targets in this game. Good matchup against the Titans. And so I like him as well as a little bit more of a cheaper play in this game. And then from there, I think that, after that, Roma Dunze, why is he not 7K? I don't know. But again, definitely the number 1 wide receiver for the Chicago Bears. Scored that touchdown last week, but really didn't have to do a whole lot after that because they just kind of ran away with the game. But still seeing 27% target per route run rate, averaging over 9 targets per game. He's 5th in deep targets, 9th in red zone targets among all wide receivers, and just great matchup. The Raiders are absolutely terrible, against opposing wide receivers, and so I really like this spot here for Roma Dunze as well. Past that, I think Ted McMillan is also in play here for the Panthers. On the Panther side, another player that's seeing a lot of usage, 9 targets per game for him. The top 15 in red zone targets. Patriots have allowed the 8th most receiving yards, the 3rd most touchdowns, and the 7th most DK points to wide receivers. So I think Ted McMillan is also in play here. As far as I don't mind Emeka Egbuka, but I somewhat wonder if we're going to see, Quinion Mitchell just completely shadow him because Mike Evans is not playing. I know Chris Godwin is supposed to be back. You couldn't pay me to play Chris Godwin with all the injuries that he's coming off of. I have zero interest in playing Chris Godwin whatsoever in this spot. So, I think you would actually I would rather probably play like a Sterling Shepard who is going to, be on the field a lot. And because they just don't really have anybody else to throw the ball to. I mean, Jalen McMillan is still out. He's going to be out for a long time. Mike Evans is out. And so I think they're going to have to throw the ball here, and Sterling Shepard's 4K. So, I would rather play Sterling Shepard at this point than I would rather play Chris Godwin because, it's not even the injury that Chris Godwin suffered last year. He also was re-injured over the offseason, in the spring and had to have another surgery. And so, there's just way too much. I don't even know if he's actually going to play, but if he does, he's going to be on I think he's going to be on a very strict pitch count. He's not going to play all the snaps. And I just can't trust that. And they priced them at 50 or 6K. No, thank you.
Yep.
No shot in hell I'm playing Chris Godwin whatsoever. I'll let somebody else do that. I don't have any interest there. Also, Jacoby Myers, great matchup against Chicago here. Didn't really get as many opportunities last week because Trey Tucker just went nuclear last week with his 3 touchdowns that he scored in that game, 145 yards. But I do agree with you. I think Michael Pittman, of all the Colts wide receivers, I want to play Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman consistently, has seen a really strong target share. He's utilized in the red zone. And so he's $5,100 in this spot here. So I like that. I think it's going to be even more consolidated targets because of Alec Pierce being out. And so I like Michael Pittman at $5,100. Past that, some of the sub 5K, like I already mentioned, Christian Kirk. I think, like I already mentioned, I'm not going to go into it again, but Christian Kirk, $4,400. Trey Tucker, like, I think it's interesting, but I think people are going to chase what he did last week. But I will say, over the last 2 games, I mean, even before last week, he saw 8 targets against the Chargers as well. He's out there for the majority of the snaps. He's 4,200. It's obviously a good matchup, but I just feel like it's chasing last week's points because, like, I don't know if this is something that I would expect for him to do, like, on back to back weeks. So I think I would rather play Jacoby Myers in this offense. I'd rather play Brock Bowers over Trey Tucker, and I think people are going to try to chase that. Um, Elakeo Maynard, I feel like we keep talking about him. He keeps, it wasn't a huge performance last week at 13.8 DK points, but at $3,900 for a player that's seeing, averaging about 6 targets per game, I think he's in play. Derek Stingley, I don't know if he's going to play, so that should help their pass defense. But here's an interesting one because you already mentioned, you kind of talked about it. I agree with you on Deebo Samuel, but right now, Noah Brown is also looks like he's not going to play. So they're going to be without 2 of their top wide
Mm,
receivers. Luke McCaffrey saw 3 targets, scored a touchdown last week. They're going to have to throw the ball to somebody here. And if Jade Daniels, I think, plays, which I do think he plays, then I think Luke McCaffrey, who's $3,400, he was a rookie wide receiver for them last year, didn't do a ton, but, no De'Ami Brown. Like, they're going to have to throw to somebody. I think Zach Ertz is also interesting, but 3 targets for him
yeah.
last week, 56 yards, and a score here for Luke McCaffrey. So I think he's also, like I said, $3,400. I think if you're looking for a cheap play, Luke McCaffrey, I think makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah, Luke or that Jalen Lane kid, that they drafted. He's been getting work on special teams mostly, but he's had some scheme looks in the first couple of games that just haven't gone the way. And he's a big body receiver, and like, so last game was where McCaffrey saw that work, right? And that's where Mariota was playing. So you kind of never know, like, who these quarterbacks are going to favor, so to speak. But I think either one of these guys could be in for a lot more work without Noah Brown being mixed. I mean, first and foremost, I think we'll talk about it at tight end, but Zach Ertz will be the dude because we've seen it happen before. I'd be much more willing to go that route, but yeah, with taking a shot on either one of those guys, it is definitely fine. I feel like it's going to be a weird one to kind of break down because most of the ownership will go to Debo for that team because he's only 6K and it's Debo Samuel. He's a name brand, but yeah, I like where your head's at going cheap to be able to fit into some of those lineups in large field GPPs, especially. Kev, before we toss over to tight ends, a couple of situations. So this New Orleans situation that we have here with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, it's such a concentrated offense. Chris Olave is going to get there. I mean, the efficiency hasn't been there, but the workload sure as hell has. I believe he's the most targeted wide receiver thus far through 3 games, which is kind of insane to think about. But it's Spencer Rattler throwing him the ball, so like you take it with a grain of salt. But some of these things got to be hitting. So he's been getting work. Rashid Shaheed is pretty much the only other guy who gets work, I feel like, for them from a wide receiver perspective. And he's a big play, guy. And they're going to be in a trailing game script. So, like, how are you attacking this New Orleans situation, if at all? I feel like Chris Olave at 5,100 is in a good spot to be, viewed as a one-off position, but it kind of feels gross considering the offense that he's tied to. What are your thoughts there?
I feel like he'd have to score a touchdown to pay off his to pay off his price because, like, last week he saw 14 targets, he had 10 catches, but only 57 yards. He's being everything they're utilizing him with is short, intermediate routes, just getting at the ball out of the hands of Spencer Rattler as quickly as possible, and he's just seeing a lot of this underneath type stuff so far. And you're right; he's had 10 plus targets in all 3 games. Like, he's being heavily utilized, but it's all these short little dump off type passes, and it's not really equating to much. He hasn't scored a touchdown. I I mean, if as a like a one off, I guess, like, I don't mind it, but like, I just think there's better plays. I mean, Michael Pittman is $5,100 right next to him. Juwan Jennings is 5K if he plays. Then I just think there's Keenan Allen is only $5,300. So, like, I think there's always other wide receivers around him. I can't see myself playing him. I just think there's other wide receivers that I would have more interest in. But I did want to ask you because I don't know if it was you mentioned them, but the two I want to ask you most about Drake London at $5,700. Like eventually Drake London's going to break out, but
Yeah.
$5,700 Drake London and $6,100 Brian Thomas Jr. I think both of those
Yeah.
guys. Like, what are your thoughts there? Because he's only $6,100 too.
Yeah. I mean, both of those actually, let me scratch that. Drake London, eh, he's just one that like I just never play him because I only play him in game scripts that I'm very confident will pop off because he's such a high volume receiver to be able to pay off. Like usually his big games are like 8 catches for 100 plus and a touchdown or two or anything like that. Like he just needs that type of work. However, at 5,700, like we're starting to have a dangerous conversation. I mean, it's kind of incredible when you're thinking about like Drake London's only $300 more than Jacoby Myers. Like what are we doing here? He's $600 more than Chris Olave, which is insane to kind of think about given the perspective. So I think we start to have a conversation. I'm interested that you brought up Drake London because I do think that Darnell Mooney is going to be in for a big game, so to speak. At one point, he's only 4,700. So even then, I would probably still be more apt to play Darnell Mooney, which is
And
kind of
he saw
crazy.
11 targets last week.
Yeah, yeah. So like that one makes a little bit more sense to me as a one-off or even a game stack because I'm not going to play Penix, I don't think, this week. But Brian Thomas, we definitely can get there. He's 6,100 going against San Fran. Like I do expect San Fran to put up points this week. I know that you talked about the Jaguars defense and what they're be able to do, but we know the San Fran team just find ways to be able to put the ball in the end zone. And so on the other side, you're gonna need your playmakers to show up. I don't know what's going on with Jacksonville situation. There's been a lot of talk of, Liam Cohen, his coaching style. Does it relate to, what Trevor Lawrence wants to do? And to be honest, Kev, like I feel like Trevor Lawrence, he hasn't earned that yet. Like you haven't done enough to be, worried about what the coach is doing or the coach is lame or whatever. Like you got to go out there and perform. So, I think that there's a lot on his plate just as much as he's much as on the hot seat as Liam Cohen is. So you would like to think that Trevor Lawrence could just get Brian Thomas the damn ball because he's the guy. I mean, Travis Hunter, we see is playing both sides, and he's kind of spread thin. Like they don't have any other receiving options that have the profile of his type. You just got to find a way to get him the ball, and I feel like they will get it right because of Liam Cohen's play style and where he's coming from. So I want to be ahead of that. And nobody's playing him, Kev. Everybody's been burned by this guy for 3 weeks in a row, and he's priced down to almost the 6K flat range. Might as well be 5K at 6,100. So yeah, I like that call out, and he'll definitely make it his way onto some game stacks for me this week. Maybe even one off. It's hard to justify at this point, but he's so cheap that I could see myself getting there.
Yeah, and San Francisco's defense is really banged up as well. So I think that helps.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's talk tight end, Kev. How bad has this position been, to start the year? I mean, we kind of talk about it all the time, but even the studs, that like you can kind of trust, to get you the work that, the minimum work that you're kind of paying for. Just get me, that double digits, give me that touchdown. And if you get 50 yards, that's great. But even then, it's been tough. We got, Brock Bowers, I feel like is in a really good spot to be the one to kind of break that mold this week. He's only 5,800 in the spot against the Bears that, really have been giving up work to the tight end position, kind of secretly. Jake Ferguson was able to get whatever he wanted. Now, granted, they didn't have much options when CD went down, but they've been targeted by tight ends so far this year. And I think Brock Bowers can really pay off that $5,800 price tag and has the potential to really, double up on scores at the tight end position this week based on some of these other guys. I do have interest in Tyler Warren a lot, whether he's, a one-off or in game stacks for me in that game. I do want to pick your brain about Travis Kelce because, I feel like he's getting into it on the sidelines with Andy Reid. there's not a lot of options that Patrick Mahomes has been able to trust. I guess you'd like to see Tyquan Thornton get in the mix there and get on the same page, but Juju isn't on the same page half the time, and they're not going to be able to run the ball. Or I don't know if they are, but Pacheco doesn't look like he's got the juice. And Kareem Hunt doesn't look like he's got the juice. So, they need somebody to step up. It's at home. He's only 4,800. It's going against Baltimore. We know that both these teams will be going at it. I have to have some interest in Travis Kelce at this price tag because he's 4,800. Like, we're not talking about 6K Travis Kelce, where you have to have a conversation about it. I think he makes for an enticing play. Jawan Johnson, I'm just going to keep playing in games where they're in the trailing game script, the way that this ball is moving around in New Orleans. Definitely have interest in Zach Ertz as a one-off or potentially stacked, given the situation unfolding with Terry McLaurin and his injury status. And then Mark Andrews, you like to see that he's coming in stride. Curious to see what Isaiah Likely's status is going to be. I'm not sure if it's been confirmed or not. I know he's missed a couple weeks already from stuff that he's been dealing with in the offseason. But if Likely were to be active, and granted it's his first game back, but this Chiefs defense has a way of limiting tight ends to some extent sometimes. I feel like you might correct me on that, Kev, but he's 4,300, so he's going to be enticing. I feel like people will be chasing him as a one-off, and I'd much rather play him in that game stack environment. But Hunter Henry, he's 4K. It feels like it's chasing because of the game that he had last week, but he's only 4K, and that Drake May has a propensity to really target him in situations that are favorable. And what's more favorable than going against this Carolina team that's allowing the most work to opposing tight ends as a defense. So for me at the top, I think I'll try and find ways to get to Brock Bowers where I can. If I can't get to him, I'm looking at Kelce or Warren because they're pretty much the same price. And then to pay down, I'm going to look at Jawan Johnson or Hunter Henry first. And then maybe Zach Ertz, given the situation that unfolds. Kev, what say you at the tight end position? Where are you going this week?
Yeah, I think there's a few different places we could look here. And I agree with a lot of the players that you've already called out. I think Brock Bowers, I don't think he's going to draw much ownership. He hasn't been great, but he seems like he's okay. You wonder if like the injury stuff that he was dealing with earlier, like it's still bothering him. But I still think this is a great spot against Chicago. Tyler Warren, phenomenal spot for him. I think I don't want to rehash all the same guys that you really hit on, because I agree with a lot of them. But I will say Kyle Pitts at $3,600. I know their offense was terrible last week, but he's drawing targets in the for this team. It's still a consolidated offense. And so Kyle Pitts at 3,600. I think some of the cheaper options we could look at, like initially I, had some interest in Britton Strain because he's only $3,200. But I will say that San Francisco just does an incredible job for the most part against tight ends because of Fred Warner. And so I don't necessarily have as much, excitement to play him. But if Colston Loveland is out, then maybe you could look at something like a Cole Kmet who's 3K. But I think even cheaper than that, Jatavian Sanders suffered a high ankle sprain. He's going to be out. So you have Tommy Tremble, who's $2,700. Yep. And then, I'm getting into my bag, because whenever we, finally get to talk about some super cheap tight ends. But also Arondé Gatson, like Will Dissly doesn't look like he's going to play again this week. And we saw, Arondé Gatson, who was a rookie, who there was a lot of buzz surrounding him in camp. And, we cut his first game. He comes out and gets 7 targets, 5 catches, 46 yards here. And so he's only $2,700 as well, or $2,600, excuse me. And so I think if you're looking for some cheaper tight ends and some source of points, I think Arondé Gatson and Tommy Tremble, I think, are 2 players that we could take a look at here on these offenses. So if you're wanting to pay down, I think those would be the 2 that I would have the most interest in right now. And then I agree with all the other guys you said. I think Kyle Pitts, Chig Okonkwo, Zach Ertz. I think all of those dudes are in play. When it comes to Travis Kelce, it's just he's seeing targets, 7, 6, and 4 targets over his first 2 weeks or the first 3 games, but he just hasn't really done a whole lot. He hasn't. The most receiving yards he's had in a game is 61. It's been fine, but like, he hasn't put together like a really strong performance. Now, could he do
Yeah.
it in this game? Yeah, he's historically had really good games against the Ravens, but I don't know. Like, even though this is not a typical price tag for Travis Kelsey, I just feel like there's probably some other options that we could go to other than $4,800 Travis Kelsey. And you did mention Isaiah Likely. I don't know if he's going to play. It looks like he got in a limited practice today. Um, basically they're saying they're just kind of see where he's at. But like I said, he did get a limited in, so I would assume they're going to, especially with them being 1-2 with the potential of going 1-3. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. If Likely's back, I would actually probably have more interest in playing Likely than I would Mark Andrews, because Likely seems to be somebody that when they play the Chiefs, they really try to get involved in the offense, where Mark Andrews just isn't as involved whenever they play the Chiefs.
You're gonna play Likely coming off injury, but you won't play Chris Godwin without Mike Evans.
There's a massive difference when it comes to Chris Godwin. With he had a broken, and then after that, over the offseason, he had to have another surgery to have a tightrope surgery done. Like, there's a big
Yeah.
difference between what he had to went through and an Isaiah Likely foot injury.
He did get paid though, Kev, in the offseason, right?
Teams
So
do
like
dumb
he's
things. Teams do dumb things all the time.
for sure, for sure. Just give you fight, give you fight.
And
Yeah,
there's
man. I think
also, and Isaiah Likely is also $3,300, not $6K like Chris Godwin is.
Oh, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, in a gross position as well. Yeah, I'm curious to see what Likely's role is going to be, because they definitely need something. They need some type of spark in this offense to get going, and he definitely was that for them at the start of last season. So yeah, I'm interested. I think Kelsey will. I think he's going to garner some ownership because of his price tag. So I'll have to see where that comes in at. I like to play Kelsey when he's not popular. If he's popular, I'll likely pivot. Real quickly, Kev, before we move on to defense and wrap it up for the people, Cleveland tight ends. So these were guys that were like, Harold Fannin was like one of the, hottest waiver wire ads after week one, because of the work that Njoku didn't see. And, Njoku has come back into the fold a little bit here, but still hasn't got going. But at some point it will. He's 3,800. Harold Fannin is 3,700. So DK's done a good job of pricing them right by each other to make a decision. But Njoku being at 3,800 in this Detroit game makes a little bit of sense, right? Like to maybe get there. I mean, he still has a prolific profile. I feel like from that perspective, where it feels like 3,800 might be a little bit too cheap for a guy like this, where he's pretty much like the what do you want to say, the second favorite option for Joe Flacco after Cedric Tillman. I think Jerry Judy's kind of like an afterthought right now. What are your thoughts on getting to Njoku this week?
I will say it's a good spot. I mean, the Lions. Now, some of this isn't factored in the fact of what Mark Andrews did to them, but they still have allowed the third most DK points on this slate among teams that are on this slate. And yes, well, I mean, Harold Fannin is going to be involved and is going to, I guess, take away opportunity from him, but he's still running more routes and he is seeing more targets than Harold Fannin is, and so. I mean, at $3,900, I don't think you can be upset about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, $3,800. I definitely might add him into my one-off pool to be able to build lineups around if I need to save some salaries. So that's an interesting spot. Let's talk about defense, and we'll build a lineup for the people and get out of here. DJ Nation, it's the DJ Nation pod powered by the Fantasy Authority. We're coming at you live. Appreciate everybody who's been rocking with us for an hour and some change, and those who are listening back on it. We appreciate you too. Shout out to everybody who's been coming into the comments. Joe Kingsley, talking up the Brian Thomas play. Adrian, who has talking some redraft questions in there. Even though this is a DFS show, we'll be sure to answer those questions in the chat, because we appreciate people who rock live with us. So we'll get to you guys. Appreciate everybody who's been with us, and we're gonna talk defense here before we start to build that lineup for the DJ Nation, for the Millie, and we'll talk Discord as well. But defense this week, Kev, it's going to be a fun one. I always like the weeks when defenses pop off because, everybody really tries to key in on who can score that touchdown, who's going to score 2 touchdowns, where's the spot that I'm, definitely got to miss out on. And so that always makes it fun. But when we're talking about, you know, eh, defenses that kind of fit the bill of what you want to do, who are aggressive, are going to rack up sacks and make plays there. Even though I love uh, getting exposure to Danny Dimes this week, I do think the Rams defense makes for an interesting play. They're only 2,900. No, they're 2,900 in this home matchup. And because of how good the front seven is, it is still Danny Dimes. So, like, do they, is he able to keep the magic going for 4 games in a row and get his win and earn his 100K or whatever, or do they start to come back to earth against a good Rams defense? Let's see. I think they're really interesting to me. The Bears, I've been playing them, but they're, when they were 2,500 or below, made it easier. They're 2,900 now as well, so I probably won't gearing on that too much. Chief defenses, they're tough this week. I did get to Cleveland late last week, going against Green Bay, but they were at home. Titans might do it for me at 2,300. They'd probably be the one that I really paid down for, but I usually try and stay in this 3K range. I think the Patriots have some interest for me at 3,100. Make for an interesting play with Travion Henderson there if you feel like he's going to be the lead back. I think Chargers make a ton of sense at 3,300 going against Jackson Dart in his first start. Just take a shot there with the way that they play defense. Where's defense popping out for you this week, Kev, as you build your lineups out?
Titans.
Yeah.
I mean, at $2,300, the Texans offensive line is fucking. It's already in shambles, and it's even.
Okay.
I mean, it's just terrible. They can't protect. The offense looks broken, and so I mean, just give me the $2,300 Titans. I will play a lot of them. I also think that you could probably talk me into maybe a little bit of Panthers here at $2,500 if you're wanting to pay down. I think those would be probably the two that stood out to me. And then, pay up. Yes. I mean, the Bills for sure in play. The Chargers are a phenomenal play, even against, I do like Jackson Dart, but he's still a rookie. First start. Like, I think that, there's going to be some growing pains there. So $3,300 Jackson Dart, I think you could also take a look at. And then if Atlanta Falcons defense is going to continue to be as bad as it is, the Commanders are not a bad play either. They're only 3K with their defense because they right now they currently rank as the Commanders do top 10 in pressure rate, and they also have 9 sacks already this year. They have forced any turnovers, but the Falcons defense is not, or offensive line is obviously banged up. Lost Caleb McGarry. You certainly can get to the quarterback there. We just saw the Panthers defense put the absolute clamps on that offense last week. And so I think Commanders are a fun our defense you could also look at 3K.
Yeah, I like that call for the Commanders. I don't know what their what their ownership is going to come in at, but yeah, they can definitely make some noise. Really good at the key in on the Patriots and Chargers in that 3K range, and then probably the Rams and the Titans. I think the Titans offer really good leverage on the field. I could see the field getting to the Houston defense on the other side against Cam Ward because they're at home. We know how those things kind of work out themselves. So yeah, I like being able to pay down for Titans, but then get that 3K range flat for payups. And that's the week 4. That's the week 4 look from the DJ Nation perspective, guys. Appreciate guys and girls. Thanks for rocking along with us for this show. Of course, we are going to build out a Millie lineup as we always do. Loading up Draftkings right now. Kev, I had the pick last week to start out the team. Where do you want to start this team out as we build for the Millie team? Only 176,000 and change entries we got to beat, but let's try and do it one time for the people.
Daniel Jones.
Love it. So we're just gonna go Michael Pittman.
Tyler Warren.
I love it. Let's go Puka. See what we can do here.
Marion Hampton.
All right. So I think we'll be in a decent spot. Well, let's see. Let's put in Henderson for now. But I was leaning to go Kyron because I think that's kind of sharp. But we got 52-33 left for if we go Travion, the double rookie. 52-33 left for wide receiver flex and defense position with this build.
Let's just plug in the Titans.
All right, so if we plug in the Titans, that gives us 6,700 for a wide receiver and a flex. I mean, now we're cooking. If we go McCaffrey, that leaves us 4,900 for a wide receiver. If we go James Cook, that leaves us 6,300 potentially. Lot of ways we can go with this.
It's a one-off, but let's just go with do that. I'll go Roma Dunze, and then we could go James Cook.
Okay.
If it perfectly fits.
And do we have so all three of our running backs will be early slate, right? Just making sure.
Yes.
That we don't miss anybody to flex late. All right, yeah. Let's do it. I mean, Rome's been so the concentration has been there for him, so I'm fine with it. And we're using all the salary, which we don't usually do, but our team's different enough. I feel like that it will be good. We got Danny Dimes leading the charge for the week 4 DJ Nation Millie Maker lineup. Amarian Hampton, Travion Henderson, the double rookie running backs, Michael Pittman, Puka Nacua, Roma Dunze round out our wide receivers. Tight end is going to be Warren. We got James Cook in the flex, and then the Titans D entering that in to the big $20 millie. And that's going to do it for the week 4 DJ Nation podcast. Kev, you got any final words for the people as they go into the rest of the week to build out their lineups for Sunday main slate?
What a time to be alive with Daniel Jones. I remember there was a time that I was big team Daniel Jones, and I got laughed at for it. And now here we are. Yeah, just with Danny.
No, I don't remember that. I don't think that happened.
I remember that happened, but he got out of New York. He got out of that situation, and he's flourishing with Shane Steichen. So, love to see it for Daniel Jones. Hopefully, he can keep this going because he's been phenomenal so far. So is the Colts.
Yeah, hey, shout out to Danny Dimes for being it's like the QB like renaissance for those who have been forgotten about or those who were in terrible situations and now get with good offensive minds and see what happens. I mean, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, now Danny Dimes. It's a good time for quarterbacks to be in this league when they can pair up with guys who absolutely know what they're doing. So shout out to all those guys who have been able to make a name for themselves. And like I said, 100K for Danny Dimes for every win that he's able to get for the Colts. So I'm rooting for the guy to get that bag. He definitely deserves it and seems to be doing well for himself already in Colts lore. Peyton Manning's taking him under the wing, I see from the Monday Night Football Manning cast. So fun stuff, man. And it's always a fun ride with the DJ Nation when we do these breakdowns, Kev. So shout out to the DJ Nation for rocking with us. You guys rock with us all season long. You have been for multiple seasons. We appreciate everybody who's a newcomer coming in. If you are a newcomer, DJ Nation podcast, powered by the Fantasy Authority. You can follow the Fantasy Authority on Twitter and X at FF_authority. You can also, if you're watching on YouTube, see that Discord link in the description. We'd appreciate having you guys over there. Chop it up, talk shop, and just talk about anything football related and otherwise. It's a good time. We've been doing this for a while, and it's just always fun to be able to do this with you guys. So with that being said, Ryan Williams, I'm signing off at Ryan Alexander _W is where you can find me on Twitter and X. The Godfather himself at Kevin Steele. You can find him on Twitter and X at FantasyRef13. We will catch you guys next week for the Week 5 breakdown. But until then, for Week 4, we'll see you in those streets. Get that money. Peace.